Good evening, Grenada, and thank you for joining us. This is our 8 o'clock update. We are live here at the National Emergency Operations Center here at the NADMA headquarters. We want to thank you, especially those joining us online and in the diaspora, for yet another update. In our last briefing this afternoon, we indicated that all relief goods and items being shipped to Grenada from outside must be addressed to NADMA, National Disaster Management Agency, and for it to be exempted from all customs duties and service charges and value-added tax. The initial period for this waiver, of course, will be until the 31st of July 2024 in the first instance. Tonight, we will focus on the cleanup efforts in the northern and western parts of Grenada and Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Guidance for cash donations will also be discussed. Access to Carriacou and Petite Martinique will also be focused on in this evening's broadcast. Joining me this evening is the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada, Honorable Andy Williams, Minister for Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation, MP Ron Redhead, Mr. Terence Smith of NAWASA, and of course Dr. Terence Walters, the National Disaster Coordinator. We would first like to hear from Mr. Terence Smith of NAWASA for a 5-minute summary of NAWASA's efforts in restoration of water in Carriacou and Petite Martinique.
Good night, everyone. As of today, and for the very first time, we confirm that all NAWASA's members of staff in Carriacou and Petite Martinique are well. With respect to our water truck distribution, today our water trucks focus on health centers and residential customers in the parish of St. Andrew. As of tomorrow, we'll be adding 2 water trucks to our 2, which were in service today. We have made an arrangement, and the St. George's University has kindly agreed to loan us their water truck, and we're making arrangements with a private water trucker so that as from tomorrow, there'll be 4 water trucks focusing in the parish of St. Andrew with a total capacity between them of 11,000 gallons. In respect of damage assessment, in the past 24 hours, 4 of our water systems, Spring Gardens, Fountain Union and Mama Can, were returned to service, bringing the total to 26 water systems recommissioned since the hurricane, and our total capacity is back up to approximately 87%. That's on mainland Grenada. 2 water treatment plants remain offline. That is the Mount Horn and the Mirabeau water systems. Between them, they treat about 860,000 gallons per day. The outstanding works to be done, just a brief word on that, comprises mainly clearing of fallen trees and debris from the access to these dams. And as of today, with a full day's work today and yesterday, the clearing of the access to the dams are about 50% complete and will continue in the morning. We also have repairs to 6-inch and 8-inch water mains, mainly raw water lines that take water from the dam to the treatment plants. So this work would commence hopefully perhaps late tomorrow when all the clearing is done. We are projected to complete these works to enable recommissioning of the plants of the Mount Horn water treatment plant by Saturday, July the 6th, and the Mirabeau water treatment plant by Sunday, July the 7th. Now, thus far, we have publicized our target date for recommissioning all our plants on mainland Grenada is Saturday, so we're basically pushing back our target deadline by 1 day for the Mirabeau water treatment plant because of the extensive damage. With respect to team deployment, NAWASA's team, comprising 2 engineers and electrical staff, returned from Carriacou about 7 p.m. this evening. They were there for the day. Essentially, We retain the services of a dive company and boat, which transported our team to and from Carriacou and Petit Martinique today. And the divers conducted a damage assessment of the raw water inlet line for each of our water treatment plants, one in Carriacou, one in Petit Martinique. And the results are that the inlet line in Carriacou is intact. It may have some minor damage, but we will only know the extent of it when the system is started up. The generator, the standby generator, appears to be okay, and the preparatory works were done on it, and it's hooked up to the reverse osmosis plant. The problem we have is the high capacity feed pump, which takes the seawater and transmits it under pressure to the desalination plant, was impacted by flooding on the site. So that pump is going to have to be returned to Grenada to be stripped and maintained, to be returned to Carriacou. The situation on Petit Martinique is a little more serious in that there's believed to be extensive damage to the inlet line, the seawater feed line. The divers could not really complete their work because of the heavy sedimentation. And there's a lot of debris and galvanized and so forth there, so they couldn't really complete their work. But also the pump house in Petit Martinique, which is right on the beach and maybe 12 or 18 inches above sea level, was damaged, and almost certainly that high pressure feed pump is going to have to be replaced. I say all of this to say that the initial damage assessments indicate that the plant in Carriacou could conceivably be recommissioned in 1 week's time, that's by July the 11th, and the plant in Petit Martinique in 2 weeks' time. So our target date for Carriacou, for the desal plant to be up and running, is July the 11th, and for the plant in Petit Martinique, July the 18th. And finally, a word on some regional and international support. Engineer Carl Pivot, a Grenadian former colleague at the National Water and Sewage Authority, who now works at the Caribbean Development Bank. He's expected in Grenada, probably has landed already this evening, on loan to us from the Caribbean Development Bank for a 2-week period to provide support to NAWASA's management and engineering team in managing the recommissioning of the water infrastructure. An urgent appeal has been made through CAWASA, the Caribbean Water and Sewage Association, Inc., which is the regional grouping of, the sub-regional grouping of the water utilities. We requested that they arrange for a loan of at least one water truck to be assigned to Carriacou to assist in distribution. So we don't have any firm word on that as yet, and we'll continue our efforts and our appeals in that regard. And finally, an offer of assistance was received last night from the German embassy in Trinidad through the head of project of the German Agency for International Cooperation, GIZ, in Grenada. So our management is in discussion with GIZ on the exact form that assistance would take, and we will publicize this when this is worked out. So thank you very much, and I would pause there.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We certainly thank you for the work that NAWASA is doing to ensure that water is restored to the affected areas as quickly as possible. We will now like to hear from the Honorable Andy Williams, Minister for Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation, to talk us through the National Cleanup Campaign, which is scheduled to begin on Saturday, July 6th. Minister Williams.
Thank you. And let me just start by saying good night to the resilient people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. In the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl, we stand together not only to rebuild, but to reclaim our beloved Tri-Island state. We have been battered, yet resilient, and this shows the strength of our people. The devastation left in Beryl's wake has been profound, testing our resolve and unity. However, amidst the debris and chaos, we have witnessed extraordinary acts of courage and compassion. Neighbors helping neighbors, strangers becoming friends, and volunteers from near and far joining hands to offer support. This weekend, starting Sunday, we gather for a national cleanup in St. Patrick and St. Mark. This cleanup is more than picking up debris or clearing roads. We affirm our commitment to each other and to the place we call home. We show the world that St. Patrick and St. Mark is not defined by a disaster, but by the spirit of its inhabitants, and a spirit that cannot be broken. Starting Saturday from 5 a.m., it's really 6 a.m., but you know Grenadian time, when you say 5 a.m., it's 6 a.m. So starting 5 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday, we will be leaving our various areas to go to St. Patrick and St. Mark, and efforts will be coordinated through the parliamentary offices. So that will be the meeting point for everyone who wants to come and take part and who does not have a transport. So we will have buses carrying you from the various constituencies to St. Mark and St. Patrick. And one of the reasons why we are doing that is because we don't want everyone to gather in one area in St. Patrick or St. Mark, but we are going to coordinate the efforts accordingly, and it will be according to the constituency. We are asking people, if you have any tools, chainsaw, cutlasses and so, come with them, feel free. Any tool that you think will be useful in assisting us to end the cleanup, feel free to bring them. NADMA is on board, and NADMA will also be helping us to get some of these tools so that people can join in the process and making it more easier. This initiative is really spearheaded by the Ministry of MIT and the Ministry of Infrastructure in collaboration with the Grenada Solid Waste. Folks have been asking, how can they help? How can they reach out? How can they be of assistance? This is a start. And we ask everyone to come out and show your support, because the people of St. Mark and St. Patrick have been hit hardest on this island, Grenada. And we're asking you to come out and show support to them, not just support to work, but also emotional support. And we are asking people, if you can walk with some food also, please feel free to do so. And anything that will make the efforts more meaningful. So this weekend will be a weekend where we ask the nation to come out and show your solidarity, show what we are made of. And Grenadians, we are resilient people, and let's show the world what we can do, and that we stand together in a time of crisis. I will end by saying, let us use this day not just to restore our streets and our homes, but to renew our bond as a community. Let us remember those who have suffered losses and stand ready to assist them in the journey toward recovery. Let us be mindful that the lessons learned from Beryl about resilience, preparedness, and the importance of unity in the face of adversity. Grenada, this weekend we have a national cleanup day, and we look forward to seeing each and every one of you in St. Mark and St. Patrick to join us in the efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Williams, for that information. We look forward to seeing you on Saturday, July 6th, for the National Cleanup Campaign. We will be beginning in St. Patrick and St. Mark. We, of course, need all the help we can get to rebuild our communities, and we look forward again to seeing you on Saturday. And of course, if you can't lift a tree or operate a cutlass or a chainsaw, you can certainly provide assistance by cooking a pot of oil down or some rice and peas. So we look forward to Saturday for a national cleanup starting at 5 a.m. in St. Patrick. Again, the parliamentary offices are the point, the focal point, so you could check in at the parliamentary office for more information about transportation. We now like to hear from MP Ron Redhead. He's going to talk to us about Carriacou and Petit Martinique and access to getting there and providing support. MP Ron Redhead, you're up next.
Thank you very much, Presec. Obviously, the situation with regards to access to Carriacou and Petit Martinique remains extremely challenging at this time. As such, we do not want to put additional pressure on the system in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, and we need to limit the amount of persons going up to the island on any given day. A state of emergency is still in effect for Carriacou and Petit Martinique. This means no unauthorized travel to these islands. It is not permitted. If you want to deliver supplies, this should be coordinated in Grenada with NADMA. You can contact relief at gov.gd. That's the email address. Contact relief, RELIEF, at gov.gd and request permission to travel to provide relief supplies. But you are not permitted to travel until you receive approval. If you're already on your way, you can drop your supplies with NADMA at Tyrrell Bay in Carriacou, but you will not be allowed to disembark. NADMA is now coordinating regular shipments of supplies and coordinating the cleanup and relief effort. If you have supplies, they will certainly reach our communities on these islands. But the quickest and most effective way to get supplies to those islands is through the National Disaster Management Agency. We are sending an advance team to Carriacou and Petit Martinique tomorrow, Friday, to assist with the cleanup and the distribution of supplies. I, as Member of Parliament, will lead the mission and support the relief effort over the weekend. So that is Saturday and Sunday. We have an amount of new vehicles will be sent in addition to what is already on the island in advance of Friday, and preparations are being made to have that done before the weekend. We will have up to 100 volunteers per day to travel on the Osprey, which is going to be chartered, to Carriacou on both Saturday and Sunday, departing early and returning the same day on both days. Volunteers would be coordinated through an established and experienced groups such as the Red Cross, the Rotary Club, and others. This will be challenging work, and as such, we are only seeking at this time able-bodied individuals who are 18 years and older to volunteer. As we seek to minimize the impact and pressure on Carriacou and Petit Martinique, we need volunteers to be fully self-contained and travel with their own food and water in this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Redhead. And of course, you heard it, you need to be fully self-contained. So that means you have to carry your own water, your own food and other supplies that you may need if you're volunteering for Carriacou and Petit Martinique. We want to hear from Dr. Terence Walters, Disaster Coordinator at NADMA at this time.
Thank you very much, Pesek, and good evening, everyone. From the National Disaster Management Agency, we continue our relief efforts in response to Hurricane Beryl. In response to dangerous Hurricane Beryl. We had volunteers working throughout the day today to package relief items and to dispatch. So we've dispatched relief items to the northern parishes of Grenada and to Carriacou and Petit Martinique. This morning, the authorities in Carriacou indicated that they were preparing shipments to go to Petit Martinique, so we have been providing relief to the northern parishes, to Carriacou, and to Petit Martinique. Now we just want to make a note here that all local relief items should be delivered to the National Disaster Management Agency headquarters at Montjelou, except you are otherwise instructed. So locally, all of the relief items should be delivered to the warehouse here at the NADMA headquarters at Montjelou. We have had some people dropping off items at another location, and the owners have asked that you cease from that practice. So again, all relief items locally should be delivered to NADMA headquarters at Montjelou, except you are otherwise instructed. This is for vessels. Now we know that some people have organized vessels from friends and other organizations. So in an effort to reduce logistical issues, all vessels carrying relief items are asked to make Port St. George their first port of entry, so that customs can effect the appropriate documentation. So we want to repeat that if you are coming in with a vessel, you should, with relief items, okay, all of the relief items, Port St. George should be your first port of entry so that customs can effect the appropriate documentation. These vessels should provide, or we're asking that all these vessels provide a copy of the manifest both to customs and to NADMA. Okay, we need a copy of the manifest for record keeping purposes and to ensure that we are aware of the items that are coming in and the items that are being dispatched. During the period ending July 31st, all relief items should be addressed to NADMA. So all relief items coming into the country should be addressed to NADMA. Any relief items addressed to individuals or organizations will be treated as regular imports, except it is then turned over to NADMA. So if you bring in items for an individual or an organization and you claim that it's relief items, you have to turn it over to NADMA for it to be treated as relief items, and then it will be distributed into the general population. So we want individuals to understand that. You must turn it over to NADMA for it to be treated as relief items, or else it will be treated in the normal way or in the normal process. At the end of the period, at July 31st, the process will be reviewed and revised as necessary. So from now until the end of July, all relief items coming into the country should be addressed to the National Disaster Management Agency. An update on shelters: we have 2 shelters that are remaining opened on mainland, and we have 34 shelteries and 2 shelters on mainland. So we have the shelters that are active have been reduced significantly, and people have been returning to their homes or seeking shelter with family and friends. So we have 2 shelters opened, and there are 34 shelteries. Now I take this opportunity to remind us that we are only 34 days into the 2024 hurricane season. Only 34 days. The season is predicted to be hyperactive, and 34 days in, we have already been impacted significantly by a major Category 4 storm. So that's the second storm of the season. We urge our citizens to continue their preparedness efforts. We have been giving information, engaging citizens about preparedness, preparedness. So we urge you to continue your preparedness efforts, because again, we are only 34 days into the season, 1 month, and we have 5 months remaining in a very active or hyperactive hurricane season for 2024. So we encourage you to be prepared, your family and your friends, your loved ones, your communities. Ensure that we do what is necessary to be prepared for the rest of the hurricane season. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walters, for those updates. We will now hear from our Prime Minister, the Honorable Dickon Mitchell. He will give us guidance. He will give us some updates on cash donations, overseas donations, and will give us an update on the progress with Grenlec and telecommunication. Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Press Secretary. Pleasant night to the citizens of Grenada, Carrickmont, Petit Martinique, both in Grenada and in the diaspora. I continue to ask for us to remember our brothers and sisters who've been directly impacted in one way or another by this dreadful hurricane. The government is doing everything it can to alleviate and minimize the challenges that many of our citizens are still facing. I have to emphasize that to a large extent we are still very much in the relief stage. We've begun in the case of St. Patrick, St. Mark, as Minister for Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation pointed out. We are moving into the cleanup stage. But the need to provide relief, the need to provide support to our citizens who are impacted is going to be a medium to long-term process. Many of our citizens have lost everything. And we have to appreciate that, particularly for certain sectors of our society, not only have they lost their homes, but they've lost their livelihoods. And we have to therefore ensure that we are able to help them. One way of doing so is via cash donations, both domestically from our citizens in the diaspora, from our international partners, friends, and well-wishers. Many of our governments within CARICOM have already begun to make cash donations. Some of our international partners have begun to make cash donations. And many of our citizens, both in Grenada and outside of Grenada, as well as friends of Grenada, have been asking how can we make those cash donations. We can start by doing so online by going to the pay.gov.gd portal. It is pretty straightforward, and once you are on the portal, the steps are there. You will see on the graphic a document prepared by the Ministry of Finance. The document will be circulated wide and fast so that everyone is clear as to how it is you can provide support. If we can have the graphic back up on the screen so I can at least just briefly walk it through. There are several ways to donate, and you can start obviously by going to a direct deposit, as in you can walk into the Grenada Cooperative Bank and you can make a direct deposit to the Government of Grenada Natural Disaster Relief Fund. The account number is 121004900. So it's at the Grenada Cooperative Bank. You can make a direct deposit to the savings account named Government of Grenada Natural Disaster Relief Fund, and the account number 121004900. For online transfers, you can use a credit or debit card. And again, you just have to go to the pay.gov.gd site. You select Make a Payment, and under the various options, you can pay for select Hurricane Beryl Relief Donation. And you can choose any amount that you want to contribute from the options provided, or you can insert an alternative amount. Of course, we are asking for you to donate generously, and so the larger the sums, the more welcome it is, and the more it will be put to better use. For international wire transfers, you can use the online banking service provided by your bank to send a wire transfer or visit your local branch to make the process completed by an agent. I will say that sometimes banks, well not sometimes, banks always charge fees. So obviously if you're making an international wire transfer, if you're outside of Grenada, you should expect that your bank will charge you some fee. The beneficiary is the Government of Grenada Natural Disaster Relief Fund. The address is in care of the Ministry of Finance, the Financial Complex St. George's, Grenada. The bank's address is the Grenada Cooperative Bank. It's number 8 Church Street, St. George's, Grenada. The bank SWIFT code is GROAGDGD, and the account number is the same number I gave earlier, 121004900. For transactions in East Caribbean dollars, there's a routing number, and it is 000000, so that's 6 zeros, 233, and you can perform an electronic funds transfer. There are obviously transactions to be done in US, Euro, or English pound sterling. Again, all of the intermediary bank transaction numbers will be provided, and you can do so. So the graphic that is up will be circulated far and wide on social media, on the website of the Ministry of Finance, as well as the Ministry of Disaster Management, so that you can circulate it wide and far. So again, we want to encourage our citizens locally. We want to encourage our citizens in the diaspora. We want to encourage our friends and well-wishers to donate generously to help the citizens of Grenada. All of the funds will go towards the hurricane relief effort. I want to emphasize that all of the funds will go towards the hurricane relief effort. And so it is for the benefit of those affected by Hurricane Beryl in Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique. I want to briefly re-emphasize some of what has been said earlier in relation to donation of goods. And let us start from donation of goods from citizens in Grenada. It's important, unless you have goods that you simply want to bring to someone individually who you know. If it is not such a case, and it is a domestic assistance within Grenada, we are asking you to kindly deliver the goods at the NADMA headquarters in Manjaloo, so that it can be recorded, so that it could be sorted, and it could be distributed appropriately. For Grenadians in the diaspora, or for citizens outside of the diaspora who wish to make a donation of goods and supplies, we are first also asking you, after you've purchased the goods and supplies, to contact the local consulate office for guidance on preferred shipping partners. Because we appreciate if you buy the goods, it still has to be shipped. And if you don't have funds for shipping it, there are preferred shipping agents that the consulate office can use that will allow for the goods to be shipped to Grenada either at preferred rates or at no charge to you. So it is important, therefore, for you to in fact contact the consulate. So if you live in New York, you obviously will contact the consulate office there. If you're in Miami, you'll contact the consulate office. If you're in Toronto, you contact the consulate office. If you're in London, you contact the High Commissioner there, and they would provide guidance as to the preferred shipping partners. It is important, if you wish for these goods to arrive in Grenada and not attract any customs, duties, etc., for the goods to be addressed to the National Disaster Management Agency, NADMA. These goods are for hurricane relief. NADMA has all of the data via the various government ministries as to the persons who need relief. Not everyone in Grenada is impacted, and not everyone is impacted in the same way, and we want to make sure that the relief goes to persons who are impacted the most and who needs the relief. And therefore, the basis of the waiver of the taxes and duties are that the goods are going for hurricane relief. And it is NADMA that's the official agency that is managing this process. So the goods need to be addressed to NADMA. If for some reason you've already shipped the goods and it is not addressed to NADMA, we will still ask that NADMA be designated as the consignee. If NADMA is not the consignee, then it is going to a private individual or entity, and it will attract customs duties in the normal course. So again, we just want to emphasize, please address it to NADMA, or NADMA will have to be designated the consignee, which means the goods essentially come into the possession of NADMA and ownership is transferred to NADMA for it to attract duties. So we're asking you please to cooperate with us. If the goods are coming in by air, the only designated port is the Morris Bishop International Airport. If this is coming in by sea, the only designated port is Port St. George, and we will ensure that it is cleared and delivered to NADMA. We appreciate there may be instances where logistically it may make sense for the goods to go straight to Carriacou and PT Martinique, But that is a decision that has to be made by NADMA, because we still need to record the goods, we still need to know that they're coming into Grenada, and we still need to make sure that the relevant persons are available to receive the goods in Carriacou and PT Martinique, as the case may be. So we are still asking for those who are shipping items via boat, that these boats or vessels still check in at Port St. George for clearance before the items are delivered in Carriacou and PT Martinique. I want to now move to telecommunications, and if we can have the graphic up from Flow. Right. This is the first official update we're getting from Flow as to the state of its recovery dashboard. And we start first with cell sites. Flow has a total of 42 cell sites in Grenada. Currently, 36 are up, and there are 6 which are still down, and the reasons given is that it has no power. As you appreciate, the sites have to be powered up, and in instances where electricity is yet to be restored or there is no backup generator, the sites are still down. So let me repeat, for Grenada there are 42 cell sites, 36 are up, 6 are down. The 6 that are down are because of the lack of power. The projected timeline for getting them back up is an additional 3 by the 8th of July, which is 3 days from now, and an additional 3 by the 15th of July. So Flow is projecting that by the 15th of July, mid-July, all of its cell sites in Grenada should be back up, and therefore there should be 100% island-wide coverage in Grenada. Regrettably, the situation in Carriacou is grim, and there is no sign of improvement before the 15th of July. The 3 cell sites are completely down, which means there is no coverage whatsoever in Carriacou at this point in time, and we do not have a projected, but let me rephrase that, there is a projected recovery date of 1 cell site for the 8th of July, and no other further dates. So we are expecting between the 8th and 15th of July that there would be 33% coverage of Flow in Carriacou. So we are obviously some significant way off before we can get to Flow having even 50% coverage of cell sites back in Carriacou, and it's testimony to the extent of the damage done in Carriacou. PT Martinique, there is only 1 cell site. That site is down. We do not have a projected date by which the site will be back up. Certainly up to the 15th of July, there is no projected date, and so coverage for Flow in in PT Martinique remains at this stage 0, and certainly for the next 11 days, we do not have any projected recovery date. For the fixed line network, in the case of Grenada, the total nodes are 157. Currently 110 are up. Down we have 47, so that works out to 63% being up and 37% being down. The projections for recovery says that by the 8th of July an additional 33 nodes will be back up, and by the 14th of July the additional 14 will be back up. And so they're projecting that, the 15th of July, they're projecting that by the 15th of July all of the total nodes for the fixed network in Grenada should be back up. Regrettably, for Carriacou and PT Martinique, all of the nodes are down, and there is no projected recovery date as yet. And so certainly up to the 15th of July, the expectation therefore is that the fixed line network in Carriacou and PT Martinique will remain down. And again, it's testimony to the total destruction of the telecoms infrastructure in Carriacou and PT Martinique suffered by Flow. If we can move to the Digicel slides, things in Digicel certainly appear a little more promising. Do we have the Digicel slides? Well, while we wait, I will certainly do it orally. Digicel is reporting that currently only 1 mobile site is offline on mainland Grenada, and therefore they are suggesting that they are almost back to full island-wide coverage. Right, so let's go. Currently, only one mobile site is offline on mainland Grenada. In the case of Carriacou, a key mobile cell site has been restored and is providing limited service to PT Martinique. The CARSIP distribution sites on mainland Grenada are now 95% functional, supporting all government services where power is available. And obviously that is crucial, because if you don't have power, you simply will not have telecoms. If we can go to the second slide. So full recovery is dependent on power and pole infrastructure to be restored at the Sotes distribution site. And therefore you would see that it is impacting government service in Sotes, particularly the District Revenue Office and the Health Center. And the Digicel team is indicating that once power is restored, then they should be in a position to reconnect the Sotes District Revenue Office and the Health Center there. In Carriacou, teams are being mobilized to reopen the Carriacou retail store as soon as possible and to provide pop-up and charging points in Grenada for citizens to charge their devices. So that is the update we have from Digicel. If we can move to the Grenlec graphic. Right. We started this graphic from Grenlec last evening. There isn't any what I would call significant change to the graphic. You would still see that St. George is almost fully restored. St. David, we still have 8.26% to be restored. And if you look at the final column in terms of expected completion dates, you would see that in the case of St. George, it is projected for this Thursday. That is, there should be complete restoration of power or energy in the parish of St. George today. In the case of St. David, the projection is next week, Friday. In the case of St. Mark, the projection is this Thursday. We would have to verify how accurate this is. In the case of St. Andrew, to be decided, but the projected full restoration timeline is an additional week. In the case of St. Patrick, it is saying an additional week, but we note that almost all of St. Patrick remains without electricity. And so I'm sure the Grenlec team is hearing me. We would need the assurance that about 1 week means about 1 week, because I was in St. Patrick yesterday and I told them that by this Saturday we should have restoration of power based on what my initial briefing from Grenlec was. So obviously we appreciate that the damage in St. Patrick is extensive, and if the timelines need to be revised, obviously we want to be able to be as accurate as possible with the revision so that citizens in that parish could plan accordingly. We are going to provide as much temporary generation support in the form of generators as possible to citizens in St. Patrick. Up to yesterday afternoon, we were delivering generators to some of the key areas that have been badly impacted. St. John, the projection says Wednesday. I'm taking this as next Wednesday for complete restoration in St. John. The next graphic is, if we can just put it up quickly, this is just a general overview of sites and the current state. So the Queen's Park site, there's no impact. All buildings, plant and equipment were not impacted, and there were no damage to the generators and switchgear. The administration site in Grandance, no impact. All buildings, vehicles, storeroom inventory, they were not affected. The Bruce Street and Grenville Street, no impact there, so the administrative aspects of Grenlec are intact. Next slide. Right, so the obvious area that would have been impacted would have been the distribution network by feeders. So the Morris Bishop Highway Airport, no impact. Mainline laterals, transformers connected. There may be odd customers who were not connected, and that explains why power was able to be restored so easily in St. George. The Woodlands, Cedar, Grandance Valley, Redgate, Laurel Lands, no impact. Mainline laterals, etc. were connected. There may be odd customers who are not connected. The Montrouge Hotel Belt, no impact, and therefore the mainline laterals transformers were connected. SGU True Blue, no impact, and therefore, again, those areas were easily connected. All right. So I want to re-emphasize that to some extent the speed of recovery is partly or largely dependent on the impact of any particular area. And so you would see with the last graphic that the reason St. George was connected so quickly was because of the fact that there was no impact in those areas. And if you continue with the Belmont feeder, the Grandlands feeder road, the Lansapine areas, they were all connected quickly because of the fact that there was little damage to those areas. And it explains why in complete contrast, as you start going up to places like St. Patrick, you would see that the entire parish is still without electricity. I want to talk a little bit about Carriacou and Petite Martinique as it relates to power, because currently there is no power anywhere, and therefore I just want to give a quick overview of the damage done there. The power plant itself experienced roof damage. In the switchgear room, the main engine hall also suffered roof damage, and the staff facilities also suffered roof damage. The early indications suggest that there was no damage to the generators and the switchgear. However, this has to be properly and thoroughly tested. The power plant in Petite Martinique, there was roof damage to the power plant and the building. The early indication suggests that there may be no damage to the engines and the switchgear. However, again, these have to be properly tested. In terms of the distribution network, all 4 feeders in Carriacou and the single feeder in Petite Martinique were completely and damaged. And all of the poles, transformers, and conductors were essentially damaged. So Grenlec has made requests with Carilec, which is its regional umbrella association of electric utility companies, for assistance with external linesmen to assist with the restoration effort in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. There will be need to secure adequate accommodation, food, water, portable generators, vehicles, and materials for rebuilding. So that has to happen. Because of the challenge in Carriacou with housing, accommodation, food, water, etc., we anticipate that the Grenlec team will, in short order, be treating with the Ministry of Carriacou and Petite Martinique Affairs and with NADMA to devise a plan that would allow for us to be able to show some force to specifically provide housing for the linesmen who will be coming in to assist with this process. We first have to find a place to house them. We obviously have to get the vehicles and all the materials that would be required to deal with the cleanup as well as the actual restoration and building out of the system. That's going to be a major logistical issue. We have to secure a site to house them, and so we'll walk through those details in the several days. I anticipate that by Monday, Grenlec should be able to publicly announce what is the interim plan to address electricity on Carriacou and Petite Martinique. I want to emphasize that it is going to be interim and it is going to be temporary. From the government's perspective, we've asked that focus be on places like the police station, the hospital, healthcare, and any large shelters that are usable, even if partially usable, so that we can house people, so that we can make sure people who are living in shelters are as comfortable as possible in the circumstances. It therefore means there will not be any restoration of homes or houses or anything in the immediate future because of the danger and the challenges we face, but it will be mostly public institutions or large areas where we can house or shelter people. Temporary generation is going to have to be rented from private personnel who have large generators and so on to support part of this effort and initiative. So the detailed plan will be worked out and that will be provided to the public, I would expect, in the early next week once it has been approved by Grenlec's board. I want to turn briefly to an update on the response of central government and cabinet itself to the challenges posed by Hurricane Beryl. The cabinet has been meeting in emergency sessions one of which took place today to deal with how we address the challenges faced by Grenada as a result of the passage of this dreadful hurricane. As I indicated, one task force is going to be comprised to deal specifically with data collection across all sectors so that we can assess the damage done, quantify the damage, so that we can provide that data to international partners, to our multilateral financing institutions, and so that it can inform the government's budgeting process and fiscal process or inactions that we may need to take to address the economic impact on Grenada. The task force will be led by the Ministry for Economic Development, and the Central Statistical Office will play a key role in that, together with the Ministry of Housing, Social, Community Development, the Ministry for Agriculture, Forestry, as well as agriculture and the environment. So it's a multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral, multi-ministerial task force. We expect that we will have preliminary detailed assessments, sector by sector, by next Friday. That data is absolutely critical to informing government's decision making, as well as to informing responses by our international and regional partners to the clear devastation brought by Hurricane Beryl. We will provide timely updates as to the receipt of the data and what it is showing. I want to highlight we will also be bringing technology to bear on the data collection process by the use of satellite imagery, by the use of drone footage, and by other tools of technology to accelerate the pace of both the data collecting and the analysis of the data. There are some sectors that are clearly hit very hard. The agriculture sector is one such sector. There is clear and overwhelming proof of significant damage to our agriculture sector in the northern part of the island. And we want to point that out almost immediately, because our agriculture sector is one of our productive sectors. There is clear and overwhelming evidence of significant housing damage, both in Grenada and almost complete devastation in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. There is clear and overwhelming evidence of significant damage to physical infrastructure, roads, bridges, and public buildings. And clearly, when it comes to telecoms and energy, there is significant damage there as well. So the data collection is absolutely critical, and we are going to do everything to make sure that we can collect this data as quickly as possible to inform the necessary decisions that we need to make. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been tasked, together with the Ministry of Environment, Climate Resilience, and Renewable Energy, with developing the necessary plans, both to engage our partners on a bilateral basis and on a multilateral basis, to seek the necessary funding and assistance to assist with the recovery and rebuilding efforts in Grenada. And so the Minister for Foreign Affairs, as well as the Minister for Climate Resilience, the Environment, and Renewable Energy, will be briefing the public in the coming days. We expect early next week as to the plans, the task force, the persons who would be tasked with the work to ensure that we are treated fairly, and that both the multilateral and bilateral relations that we have understand the enormous loss and damage that Grenada has suffered and will continue to suffer as a result of the passage of Hurricane Beryl. So that's at least two updates in terms of initiatives taken by the Cabinet. The Minister for Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation has already talked about the cleanup campaign in St. Patrick and St. Mark, and the Honorable Ron Redder has talked about the relief surge that we will be undertaking in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, starting on Friday with an initial advance team going up to help with assistance in clearing and cleaning up the roadways, and then on Saturday and Sunday with volunteers going up to assist with the distribution of relief supplies. As has been indicated by Minister Redhead, the government of Grenada is procuring the purchase of at least 10 vehicles, trucks and pickups to assist with the relief effort in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, and we hope to get these vehicles there by latest tomorrow afternoon or early Saturday morning so that we could help with this initiative. I want to say a special word of encouragement to the Member of Parliament for Carriacou and Petite Martinique Affairs, and all of the government workers there, from the health sector to the police to education, that you remain in our thoughts and prayers. We are going to do everything to support your effort, your initiative. It is going to be a long-term recovery process. The minister responsible for mental health is very anxious about ensuring that we provide adequate support given the traumatic nature of this event and the fact that you are going to have to live with and see firsthand on a daily basis the carnage wrought by this terrible hurricane. So we are going to do everything to support the mental and emotional and spiritual state of our citizens in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. But as Minister for Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation said, we are confident of your resilience. We are confident that you will get this through. There are some other initiatives that we are working on, and I would just want to highlight them. We appreciate that in the immediate aftermath of a hurricane like this, if we are not careful, we can find ourselves dealing with other tragedies. The Top Hill home in Carriacou is a home that housed senior citizens. They are currently at a shelter that is not adequate to house them. The government is therefore taking the decision that we will relocate them to Grenada. The team from the Ministry of Housing, Social and Community Development, led by Acting Minister Jonathan Lacrette, has been visiting sites in Grenada this afternoon with the view to securing a site so that we could begin to evacuate those senior citizens starting from tomorrow, if the logistics goes as planned, to Grenada. We want to ensure that we minimize any risk to our senior citizens and to our vulnerable citizens. We have also given instructions that if there are any pregnant women who are close to their delivery date or past their delivery date, that we will also evacuate them to Grenada to make sure that there is no risk to them or their babies because of the challenges faced in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. We'll also ensure that if there are any other vulnerable members of the population, persons who might be differently abled or persons with any chronic ailments or illnesses, that we will also relocate them to Grenada so that they could be adequately cared for. I want to emphasize to those of us on mainland Grenada who are not impacted by the storm, to be empathetic to those who are. It is important for us to appreciate that we may have to call upon Grenadians to house our brothers and sisters from Carriacou temporarily, to provide emotional support, to provide material support to them, because this is going to be a long process and we are almost rebuilding from scratch. But I have every confidence that those of us who are not impacted in any significant way from the storm will donate our time, our material resources, our finances to ensuring that our brothers and sisters in the north of the island and in Carriacou and Petite Martinique are made as comfortable as possible while they have to go through this difficult period. So again, I want to thank the citizens of Grenada, Carriacou and Petite Martinique for the tremendous support, the words of encouragement, the prayers. I want to thank our regional partners and international partners who have come to the aid of us here in Grenada. I want to emphasize it is not just Grenada, it is St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it is Jamaica, and so this is something that is impacting all of us regionally. So please keep our brothers and sisters in the region who are suffering the same terrible fate as we are in your thoughts and prayers. And as well, if you are able to donate and to contribute to their relief efforts as well, we would also encourage you to do so. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us tonight. We appreciate we have given you a lot of information. We don't mean to engage in information overload, but we want to be as transparent as possible with the public in terms of what is happening as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for your thorough updates. I know you gave so much information. I know we may not have a long Q&A, if any at all, this evening. Our public utilities and telecommunication companies are certainly working extremely hard to restore services, and we thank them very much for their efforts. We have a few journalists online. Let's try to keep it as concise as possible so the panelists can answer your questions as quickly and as transparent as possible. We do have the nation, Barbados, with us this evening, and we'll also accommodate their question. So those of you online, please proceed. I see Callistra online. If you wish to ask a question at this time, you may proceed. While we wait on Callistra, we do have a question from Facebook, and this one goes to Dr. Walters. Does NADMA have any plans to set up other drop-off locations, especially to accommodate the non-driving public? And they gave some examples, maybe police barracks, supermarkets. What are your thoughts, Doctor?
All right, so we do not have any plans at this point, but if it becomes necessary, then we will do so. But at this point, we don't have any plans to establish other sites.
All right, thank you. I also see Mikey Hutchinson. You're online. You may ask your questions at this time. And I also see a hand from Kenroy Batiste. Kenroy, you may ask your question. I don't believe Mikey has a question at this point. So Kenroy, you may proceed.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody. Kenroy Batiste, Grenada Broadcasting Network. I have two questions, one for Prime Minister, one for Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell, and the other for Dr. Terence Walters. Solar PV near Carriacou has sustained damage due to the passage of Hurricane Beryl. Can you confirm that this is indeed the case? If so, to what extent has the solar PV plant sustained damage?
I can confirm that the plant has sustained damage. I can't give you the extent to which it's sustained damage, and I probably want to make this point because I'm not sure we are understanding it. We are only 3 days since the passage of Hurricane Beryl. There's been total and almost complete devastation in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. The ability to move, to get from point A to point B is still severely restricted. We are dealing with fallen poles, electrical wires, massive amounts of debris. And so the ability to do this kind of detailed assessment in Carriacou is still severely restricted. The ability to even deliver relief is still severely restricted. I can tell you the solar plant is damaged because of the fact that I got an aerial view and specifically asked that the helicopter fly over the area so that I could make my own initial assessment of the state of it. And absolutely, yes, it is damaged. The extent, I can't tell you. And until Grenlec or such other similar bodies at the site and able to assess it, then we'd be able to give a more accurate update on that.
Okay, thanks for that. Dr. Walters, question for you. What is NADMA doing to guard against any chance of a health crisis on the Sister Isles in the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl? I ask the question because many times we hear of reports, we even see manifestations of health crises in disaster zones.
All right, so the Ministry of Health did the initial assessment, and we had environmental health on the initial assessment, and so these ministries responsible for health or the ministry responsible for health, I should say, that ministry is ensuring that it does what is necessary to prevent a health crisis. And in terms of health care, I can say that a field hospital will be erected in Carriacou to provide services or health care services. And the other issues as it relates to the disposal of garbage, again, it's early days, and the Ministry of Health and the Solid Waste Management Authority, okay, they are taking steps to minimize the risk, okay, of any health crisis or environmental crisis on the Sister Isles of Carriacou and Petit Martinique.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dr. Walters.
Sorry, I want to just respond to this as well because I think it's important to highlight a couple of things. NAWASA gave a pretty thorough update on the water situation in Carriacou and the fact that it expects the desal plant, etc., to be back online within a week in the case of Carriacou and in the case of Petit Martinique in 2 weeks. Usually water is the biggest challenge in the immediate aftermath of disasters like this. And when you don't have water, then sanitation becomes an issue, hygiene becomes an issue, and then you run the risk of the spreading of illness and diseases. So I think we can see that NAWASA is acutely aware of this, hence, and in a sense, we're fortunate that we can have water restored within a relatively short space of time. That's the first point I want to say. The second point, that's why there's a state of emergency in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. We wish to minimize people moving or going to Carriacou and Petit Martinique unless they absolutely have to, because we appreciate that the system and the infrastructure is stressed, and therefore we don't want people going up there if they don't have to. That's the second point we are making. Thirdly, I've indicated that for vulnerable populations, including the elderly and so on, we are evacuating and moving them to Grenada. Again, we recognize that if you have homes, if you have shelters, where you don't have the normal sanitation or hygiene standards, where water is in limited supply, it is far easier for disease, etc., to get out of hand. I should point out, however, that the climate smart health facility in Carriacou is relatively functional. I was there on Tuesday while the electrical engineer who came up with the team from the Ministry of Infrastructure was able to hook up the generator. So that generator is up and running. So that center has some electricity. The nurses were at the facility. They reported that they were able to treat several persons with lacerations and wounds as a result of damage that they suffered from the flying debris coming out of the hurricane. We visited the hospital. There is a generator at the hospital. Yes, there's significant damage and so on to the hospital. When we were there was only one in-house patient that the nurse was caring for. So we're making the point to say that we are doing everything within our power to make sure that we take all of the necessary steps to minimize any health risk or any public health risk to persons. The main challenge still is movement on the road and obviously treating with the debris, and we expect that the Solid Waste Management Authority will obviously have a plan to treat with this shortly. I want to emphasize though, NADMA doesn't supplant the other ministries. To some extent, it is there to support them in times of crises or disaster. The Ministry of Health is still functional, and it is still responsible for public health within Carriacou and Petit Martinique. And so the team, I know Dr. Sean Charles and the team have been up there as early as they could have. I think that would have been on Tuesday morning to assess the situation and to give the necessary guidance to the public. So I'm saying this, at this point, we feel relatively confident that there is no risk of any health, public health outbreaks or anything of the sort to the population of Carriacou and Petit Martinique.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for your response. There is another question for MP Ron following your announcement. There are people who have already bought tickets to travel to Carriacou on the Osprey tomorrow. Can you reiterate what is the plan upon arriving in Carriacou to deliver and drop off items?
Right. Well, thank you very much, Presec. So the curfew remains in effect. During the day, it is ended at 6 a.m. and recommences at 6 p.m. every day. And as such, they would be required to certainly leave the island upon that time. Now, if you purchased your ticket and you are expecting to overnight, you would have to do so at your own risk. Because as mentioned by the Honorable Prime Minister, there are very limited amenities, almost non-existent in some parts, and therefore it would be difficult for an ordinary citizen without the training and capacity and the know-how to be able to survive, even if it's just for 2 days. So it is highly discouraged to go to Carriacou and Petit Martinique at this time, to add further pressure on an already challenging system.
All right, thank you, MP Ron Redhead, for your response. We have a question from Linda Straker, and then we'll take the final question from the nation, Barbados. Linda, you may proceed.
Good night to everyone, and thank you. Well, I had about 4 questions. I hope they can be answered. My first question is, on Tuesday night, the Prime Minister mentioned that the Finance Minister has written to the multilateral institution for Grenada to kick the debt suspension clause because of Grenada current status. Can you tell us whether or not these organizations has responded to Grenada, and what were these response?
I'm not in a position to say whether a response has been received as yet.
Okay, well, the other question is linked to that. Now, I know that we're just 72 hours into burial. Earlier this year, no, not this year, last year, we would have, the Parliament would have amended the fund, the CBI-related fund, contingency fund, which was initially at 40% of CBI earnings, and reduce it to 10%. Are you in a position to tell us how much is currently in that fund?
The indication I have from the Ministry of Finance is somewhere in the region of $30+ million.
And the other question I have, MP Ron mentioned that he will be leading a team. Earlier in the week, in the immediate aftermath, we were told that Sylvan McIntyre is leading the relief effort. Can you tell us what is the different responsibility that they have, and who would be overlapping on whose role?
Nobody's overlapping, and the role of Mr. McIntyre remains in place. What MP Reddit is talking about is the need for us to provide additional support of volunteers who will assist with the distribution of supplies on Saturday and Sunday in Carriacou. If you're asking people to volunteer, recognizing the fact that there's a significant need to distribute food, water supplies, hygiene kits, sanitation kits to people in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, it has to be coordinated, because the people who are going up to volunteer themselves have no place to stay. We do not want them to use the water that is meant for people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. We do not want them to use the food that is meant for the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. So we need to be in a position where we coordinate this effort from Grenada, first and foremost, so that people understand I'm going to volunteer. These are the terms and conditions. I need to work with my own food, my own water. Second, there is no communication or very limited communication in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. So again, these volunteers are going up for a day. We need to make sure that when they get to Carriacou, Petit Martinique, they don't sit around idle, that we have a clear sense, this is what you're doing, when, where, how, these are the trucks you will be loading, these are the trucks you'll be unloading, these are the villages you're going to, etc., etc. That is essentially what the relief surge effort is for this weekend, because we appreciate that we are a couple of days into the passage of the hurricane, and while the initial excitement, if you want to call it this, would have passed, the reality is now setting in that you have no water, you have no electricity, you have no supermarket, you have no job, and you have to eat. And therefore we need to ensure that we can provide that support by having volunteers go up. It is not a situation where you can go up and sleep over, because there's no place to sleep. And so we need to make sure this is well coordinated, and that we can provide the necessary support to Mr. McIntyre and his team, and to the Ministry of Carriacou and Petit Martinique Affairs. I want to re-emphasize, when Mr. McIntyre left here on Tuesday morning, he was going to a situation in which there had been no communication with Carriacou and Petit Martinique up to that point in time. So his mission, first and foremost, would have been to some extent a reconnaissance mission to actually assess the state of Carriacou and what is required. Now that these assessments are ongoing, we know via Mr. McIntyre, and we know via the Ministry of Carriacou and Petit Martinique Affairs, that they need volunteers to help with the food distribution relief effort, and that is what MP Reddit and the team are going up to support.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
My final question is, in terms of the relocating of the senior citizens and possibly pregnant women, would the seniors be entwined to existing homes, or there will be a new place for them? And with regard to the pregnant and women and vulnerable persons, what is government plans for housing these people?
I can't give you the details of the plans for housing the pregnant women at this point in time. I said it's either women who are close to due date or women who are past the due date. And so my expectation is that if they categorize as that, is that they will be hospitalized so that they can make the children. For other vulnerable groups, at this point in time, I can't give you a definitive plan as to where they're going to be housing. I've said specifically in relation to the elderly from the Topil home that the Minister Lacrette and his team this afternoon would have been looking at 2 sites. I can't give you the update because I have not spoken to him since they left to look at the sites. But the sites are not existing homes. They are sites that one of which was a home that was closed. That's located in Pomeroy in St. David, and the other site is a site in True Blue. Minister Lacreta and the team would obviously report tomorrow as to the site visit and whether either one of them is suitable, and if they're suitable, then we will take it from there.
Is there any plans by government to use temporarily use any of the existing Chinese-donated homes as temporary housing for persons affected by the person out of Carriacou who has been affected by Beryl?
Yes, that is actively under consideration, and in fact, we anticipate that the Ministry for Carriacou and Petite Martinique Affairs, the Ministry for Housing and the Housing Authority are going to, in fact, come to some form of agreement that would allow the Dumfries site, once it is ascertained that there has been no major damage to it, to be used for temporary housing.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, and thank you, Linda. We appreciate your contribution. We now move to the nation Barbados for their contribution, and then we will close for this evening. Mr. Coppin?
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Firstly, First, I want to know how much money do you think will be needed to restore the neighboring islands? Can you give me an estimate?
I don't want to give you an estimate. What I can say to you, it will be a couple times the GDP of that area. I would say that by next week we would want to put a dollar figure to it. I really don't want to engage in wild estimates. All I can tell you is that let's take the power grid. It has to be completely rebuilt. You've heard, for example, telecoms. It has to be completely rebuilt. Schools, major damage, rebuilding. Health centers, hospitals, roads. I mean, the entire housing stock. There's no agriculture on the island, so it will be, in my view, 3 or 4 times the GDP of Carriacou. And then when you add Grenada's situation, just for context, when Hurricane Ivan passed here 20 years ago, the damage was estimated at 2 times Grenada's GDP. So you're talking then, 20 years ago, $2 billion. Now, obviously, it's 20 years later, and the damage in Grenada has not been as extensive. But, you know, inflation hasn't gone down. And in many instances, they are unaccounted for costs. I will tell you the cost of the environment, the forest, for example, it has to be replanted. That alone is going to run us into several hundreds of millions of dollars. So I will resist the temptation to put a figure on it without the detailed damage assessment coming in from our team, which we hope to have by latest next Friday.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
And
go ahead.
Right. Oh, finally, I just want to know what are the state of the shelters on the 2 islands? Like, how are they doing right now?
All right, I'll ask Mr. Walters to address the state of the shelters on both islands.
Right, so as I announced earlier, there are only 2 shelters open, 34 residents, and we have to, that's on mainland Grenada, and on Petite Martinique, there is 1 shelter that's open. We know 1 shelter open on Petite Martinique, and Carriacou, we need to do a further assessment, which we hope to do tomorrow, to ascertain how many buildings are being used and how many people are being housed in those buildings.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution, Mr. Prime Minister. I think at this point we probably need about $1 gazillion, right, to fix the islands. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I want to thank the Prime Minister, the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, MP Ron Redhead, Honorable Andy Williams, Mr. Terence Smith, and Dr. Terence Walters for your presentations this evening. Viewers, listeners, this has been our 8 o'clock update. We thank you for joining us this evening. We are stronger together, so let us continue to work together to build a better Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. So have a good night, everyone.
business loan because of limited credit history or loan security? The Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee has the security you need.